a 40-year career. Yes, 40 years as a teacher of chemistry, astronomy, and math. Many of his stories have a STEM thread and an interest in the unusual. He's worked on storytelling festivals in Arkansas, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, and is currently co-host with Fanny Crawford of the Enlighten Radio Storytelling Hour at talltales.enlightenradio.org. Who knows what story he will bring to us tonight? But now please help me welcome Stas Ziolkowski.
Thank you, Joanne. I'm glad to be here. Tonight's story is about my friend Jack. Jack was at an age where he had gotten out of the habit of being so lazy, and his mother was so proud of him. He did so much of the work around the place, always made sure she had plenty of wood piled up to keep them safe and cozy. And on this particular day, he said to his mother, "Mother, I'd like to go and visit my uncle." And she said, "Well, that's fine, Jack. Just make sure you're a good boy while you're there and don't forget about me." So Jack took off to go see his uncle. On his way, he had to pass the king's house. And whenever he was down that way, the king's daughter had a habit of hanging out by the fence. So he stopped and spoke to her. She asked where he was going. He told her he's going to see his uncle. When he left, the king's daughter reflected on what her father had been saying for a long time, that if any man could make her laugh, the king would give him permission to marry her. She had never laughed in her whole life. Well, Jack went off to his uncle's and he had a great time. He stayed there and he helped them out around the place, worked all day, and in the evening they went and played music with some of the fellows from that neighborhood. And after about a week, Jack sat down at the table and his uncle said, "Jack, you know, I think it might be about time you thought about going home to see your mom, make sure she has everything she needs." Well, Jack agreed. So the next morning, his uncle got him off and handed him something and said, "There's, Jack, I got this needle and this thread for you for helping out this week. And you can take it home to your mom. She can show you how to use it." So Jack put the thread over his shoulder with the needle hanging down, and off he went. When he got down near home, of course, he had to pass the king's place. And there was the king's daughter down by the fence. And Jack said, "How do you do?" And she said, "Lord, Jack, what is that on your shoulder?" And he pulled it up, held it out, and showed her. She said, "Jack, you shouldn't be carrying something like that on your shoulder. Here, let me show you. You take something like that." And she took the pointy end of that needle and put it through the front of his shirt and then out only a little past that. And she said, "See, it just hang there by itself." Well, Jack said, "I'll have to remember that." And off he went. Well, went back to his mother's place and helped out again, did all the chores every day that he could. And he kept bringing in more and more wood, make sure she had plenty. About a week and a half went by and Jack said, "Mama, I'd like to go see my uncle again." "Well, okay, Jack, you go ahead, but remember, be a good boy and don't forget about me." "Okay, Mom." So off he went. As he passed the king's house, there was the king's daughter, and she said, "Jack, where are you off to now?" "I'm going back to see my uncle. Had a good time last time, and I'm looking for some more fun." "Well," she said, "I hope you get another nice present." Off Jack went. Got to his uncle's, and they had a great, great week. Every day they worked hard. In the evening, some friends came over, or else they went to a friend's house. There was music, a couple of guitars. One guy played the banjo. They had a wonderful time. Well, week went by, and Jack's uncle said, "Jack, I think you should think about going back to see your mom." Next morning, Jack was ready to leave, and his uncle came out and said, "Here, before we go, this is for you." And he handed him a sword. It's kind of rusty looking, old, but he said, "This is your great-great-grandfather carried this in the Revolutionary War, Jack. So you take care of it." Well, Jack thought that was fine. He started on down the road, and he was carrying a sword on his shoulder. And when he got near the king's home, he saw the king's daughter down by the fence, and right away he stopped and he thought, oh, okay, I know what to do. He took that sword, he held up one end of his shirt, pushed the sword through that cloth, poked it through the other side, and as he walked down past the fence, the king's daughter just looked at him. Jack, what did you do? He said, oh, I got this sword from my uncle. She said, Jack, you've ruined your shirt. You should have been carrying that on your shoulder. Oh, I'll remember that next time. Off Jack went down to see his mom. Well, his mom was happy to see him. They had a nice time together. In fact, he stayed there for 2 weeks. He had so much fun with his mom, getting things done, sitting around the fire in the evening. Finally, he said, Mama, I'm going to go off and see my uncle again if it's okay. She said, sure, Jack. Just be a good boy and don't forget about me. Well, off he went. And as he passed the king's house, there was the king's daughter. And she waved to him, said, where are you off to, Jack? Going to see my uncle. He waved goodbye and off he went. Well, that week at his uncle's, they did some dancing and learned some new songs. And he learned a song he had never heard before. It's called Weevily Wheat. I don't want your weevily wheat, and I don't want your barley. Take some flour for half an hour and bake a cake for Charlie. Well, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to Jack, but he liked the way they did it. And he had some fun. So about a week went by, and Jack started thinking, I should go home, see my mom. So his uncle came out and said, Jack, you've done a really good job here, so I want you to know I'm going to give you this coat. Well, a little horse. Jack thought, wow, that's nice. Thanked his uncle, took the coat. He had a little rope around the coat's neck and walked on home. When he got near the king's house, Jack thought about what the king's daughter had told him last time. And so he got down on his knees, crawled under the coat, grabbed the coat by its front legs, and had his head tucked under the coat's neck, lifted the coat up, and he staggered on down. And the girl looked at him and said, Jack, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm carrying on my shoulders. She said, no, Jack, put the coat on the ground. You should be riding them. Oh, well, all right, I remember that. Off home Jack went. Well, there he was, told his mom all about the dancing and the fiddling going on and the banjo playing and singing, and stayed there for a week. Said once again, Mama, I want to go see my uncle. Well, go ahead, Jack. Just remember, be a good boy and don't forget about me. So off he went. And as he went past the king's house, the king's daughter said, I guess you're going to see your uncle, Jack. I said, yes, that's right. And she said, well, I hope he gives you another nice present. Me too. Off he took. He went up to his uncle's house, and he spent another week there, and they had such a great time. He did more singing and dancing, and in the evenings, they worked all during the day. And finally, his uncle said, it's about time to think about going home, Jack. And he said, yes, sir. So in the morning, Jack was ready to go, and his uncle came out of the barn with a heifer. And he had a rope around the heifer's neck and led it to Jack and said, Jack, this is for you and your mom. Now you can finish raising this heifer and you and your mom take care of it. You'll have milk and it'll just be fine. So Jack said, thank you, and off he went. Well, he got down near the king's house and he stopped. He thought, oh yeah, she told him last time he should be riding. So he just leapt up in the air and landed on the back of that heifer. But when he did, he wasn't thinking properly and he was sitting backwards. So he couldn't grab onto the head. He had to grab onto the heifer's tail. And he grabbed onto that tail and the heifer started to bucking and jumping and going sideways and everything. He got down near the girl by the fence and she was laughing so hard. She was bent over, holding her knees and holding her stomach and laughing. Her father came out and saw that, and he couldn't believe it. Well, her father called for some men. They came over and grabbed Jack, helped him off the heifer, and the king came down and said, Jack, I've never seen my daughter laugh so much. If you like to, you can marry her. Well, the very next day, the king took Jack to town, bought him a brand new suit, hired a carriage for them with nice horses, took them to the chapel, and he had them married that day. And the king's daughter and Jack moved in with his mother. And the last time I was down their way, they were doing right good.